Joe Rogan has interviewed scientists, soldiers, psychics, and survivors. But every now and then, something breaks through the laughter and logic. A story that makes the room quiet. Something not meant for entertainment, but confession. These are the moments that weren't supposed to be remembered. These are the scariest stories ever told on Joe Rogan. Let's begin with one of the most credible alien encounters ever documented. Not by conspiracy theorists, but by a highly trained U.S. Navy pilot. This isn't hearsay. This is radar data, multiple witnesses, and a pilot who had no reason to lie.
Hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot, and so the other jet is on my left-hand side, and I'm going to go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're going to end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock, and we are at the 6 o'clock position, and my wingman is off to my left side, so she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm. No white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see whitewater, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over it and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the east. So you've got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, oh, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wizzo in the other airplane comes up and says, hey, skipper, do you? And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, dude, do you see that? What is that thing? And what we see is this white Tic Tac looking object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the whitewater that we see.
How big is this thing?
Over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why I say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not sensors, right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? The helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. If you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that it's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet, and we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes?
Not overly small. An airplane down that low, it's 40 feet. You can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm going to go check it out. That's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm going to stay up here. And I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views. And the other airplane will kind of have a god's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. So I got this nice easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about, 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The Tic Tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns. So now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface, we're up high, we're coming down, and it starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around a circle, I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle, nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, I don't know, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it. And I just kind of drop my nose aggressively and I cut across the circle and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I can get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose and it starts to accelerate. And within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone.
I've seen CGI that looks less believable than what Fravor describes. And yet, this is the one event no one can debunk. If the Tic Tac wasn't ours, then whose was it? Now we go back to 1975, to a remote Arizona forest where a man vanished in front of his friends and reappeared 5 days later, terrified, confused, and permanently changed. This isn't just a story. It's one of the most investigated abduction cases in history.
Just loaded up our equipment. We're headed out. And I looked up ahead and I saw this kind of glow coming through the trees. First I thought, no big deal, you know, it was deer hunting season. Thought maybe there was some hunters camped up on the hill up there. Maybe light shining through a tent. It was still something really strange, kind of caught my eye. And one by one, the other guys in the crew started looking, but nobody said, "Oh my God, what's that?" or anything like that. It was just kind of an idle curiosity at first. But when we burst into the clearing where we could see the source of this glow, it was just, whoa, you know, I mean, it was just mind-blowing instantly. I inexplicably got out of the truck and ran toward this thing. But I thought it was just going to take off, be gone in a flash. And
So when you say in the clearing, so are you driving on a dirt road?
yeah, it's a dirt road. Trees are real thick. This was a part of the contract we hadn't cut in yet, so trees were a lot thicker there, except for this clearing. And we weren't the only ones that saw it. We found out later. Sheriff had on file people who were in the area that saw it, you know, hunters and fishermen over there at Black Canyon Lake. And the movement that they described was what the crew described when it left.
Now, what do you remember when you were going through your mind and you're trying? I mean, this is a story you've told so many times, and this is a story that's been turned into a film, which it's got to be very surreal. But when you look into your memories and you try to go back to that day.
Well, I don't try. It's something I try to block out, but it's unforgettable. And there's...
what do you remember seeing when you ran into the clearing?
Well, the whole clearing was lit up with this weird glow. It's really hard to for any artist or movie to try to duplicate the strange glow there was there. Made everything look really, really pretty eerie, you know. And
did it have a color to it?
it was kind of a golden color.
So what did the craft itself look like?
It was classic disc-shaped craft. Years later, there was a report. I can never remember names, but this guy was saying that he worked at Area 51, and they had something in there. He worked with the Tester Model Corporation to create a model of what he was describing. And that's actually the closest of any of the other descriptions I've seen.
So you see this thing, this disc-shaped craft,
Yeah.
and then what happens?
It started to move and started to get louder.
Louder.
Yeah. There was a low thunderous kind of a rumble that you actually sort of felt more than heard. And then there were other high-pitched frequencies. It suddenly got louder as it started to move. And, at the same time, the guys in the truck were screaming, "Get away from there, let's go, get back in the truck, let's go." And, which would have been the smart thing to do. But as soon as it moved, it startled me. And I just ducked for cover. There was a log there. I got down behind this log, and they were screaming, "Let's go, let's go, let's go." And I didn't need to be told. I was just going to, stand up and run away. But see, when I jumped for cover, I went down and forward to reach where the log would hide me. And that brought me closer to it. So when I stood up, at that point, that was the closest I was to the object.
How close?
It was still like 8 or 10 feet away, from the surface of it. But that was when the energy discharge happened. At the time, some of the other guys on the truck were thinking, immediately Steve said, "It got him." Like, if you shot a deer, you got it,
Right.
And so it might not have been, as we assumed at first, that it was some kind of stun gun or something, but maybe just closing that gap allowed this energy to leap to ground through me, except for the Everglades. The Everglades has a bit more, but that's over water. So that adds to another theory. What were they doing there,
So what do you remember from that moment on?
When I regained consciousness, it wasn't real quick. It wasn't real woken right up. It was real slow. It was dim. My consciousness was kind of like in and out for a while. I didn't know where I was. The pain and the feeling that I was mortally wounded, something was so wrong inside. I felt like I was dying. And this is what really fueled the panic when I finally laid eyes on these creatures. Of course, all of the mental programming that we get from Hollywood that aliens are invading monsters, didn't help. But I instantly associated this feeling of dying with pain with them. So I was combative immediately.
Where were you?
I was lying on my back on a raised table. There was a light above me. It was not real bright. It was not so bright that I couldn't, see the outline of the fixture. But
What did the fixture look like?
kind of like that, only much larger. Just a soft glow. And in the movie, there's a little bit of striking on the part of the aliens against me. That didn't happen. I lashed out at them. The one closest to me, I felt really weak. I didn't have enough strength to do much. So when my arm contacted him, he just fell back very unexpectedly easy into the other one. And I rolled off the table in the other direction. And they came around the table, and the three of them were coming towards me. And I just grabbed something from behind me, an object off of the shelf there, and started swinging it at them.
What was the object?
It was just some large, long cylinder or rod, glass, some clear material. I wasn't studying it. I was looking at them and swinging wildly, screaming threats. They stopped. And I was planning on attacking, more fully, just making way past them. The only doorway I could see was on the other side of them.
And it looked like a doorway?
Yeah, it looked like a doorway, just, you know.
What did they look like?
I guess it's a pretty typical description nowadays. Very large eyes, hairless, two eyes, nose, mouth. I didn't see them speak or no change in the expressions. And to me, that in the face of all the screaming and the fear that I was projecting, their lack of reaction probably just added to my panic. But
did they feel like they were a living creature, or did they feel like they were a robot?
Well, they were without expression, I'll say that. But, you know, I've had 45 years to think about that. In more recent years, I think, well, maybe if they're telepathic and it's developed enough to where they don't need to talk, they also don't need facial expression.
Right.
And so their ability to communicate with each other would be much richer and more complete than we have. And speech and frowns or smiles or whatever would become obsolete pretty quick.
Yeah. Also, their musculature, did they look like smooth, like they had no clear muscles?
Yeah, they were pretty smooth, very light. When I hit the one, it fell back into the other one pretty easily, like he weighed hardly anything.
Like a little kid?
Yeah. That was the most terrifying experience of my life. But when I tell the story and try to relate to people, I'm trying to communicate what I experienced and how utterly, utterly traumatic that was and how it was so devastating.
And after 5 days, he woke up in the forest, cold, disoriented, and gasping like he had just escaped a nightmare he couldn't remember. Travis stumbled through the trees until he found a highway, barefoot, weak, and terrified. The stars above him were the same, but he was not. He called his family from a payphone with shaking hands, unsure if they would even believe he was alive. Whatever happened to him up there, it changed him. You can hear it in his voice, but not the sound of someone making up a story, but someone still trying to make sense of what they survived. This next one isn't about outer space. It's about what visits you in your own bedroom. Sleep paralysis is terrifying enough, but the real horror is what so many people claim to see while frozen in place. A figure in the corner, waiting.
I don't really suffer from it too bad anymore, but like in my late teens and early 20s, I had really bad sleep paralysis.
Whoa.
And also accompanying that was, I forget if it's called hypnopompic hallucinations or hypnagogic hallucinations. But I could tell you, right, you know, like, I'll be laying in bed, or I would be at the time, and I would kind of wake up, but I wouldn't be able to move my body. And then, you know, and aside from that, you feel the overwhelming sense of like, there's another presence here. Ooh. And it's ominous. And you fucking, if you have the hypnagogic hallucinations or the hypnopompic hallucinations, one is when you hallucinate as you're going into sleep. One is when you hallucinate as you're coming out. I have the one where you hallucinate as you're coming out of sleep. So I would wake up, and probably the first time it happened, I was 11, and I saw this robed figure like walk across my bedroom.
Whoa.
And then when I was 15...
What did it look like a real thing?
Oh, yeah. Like, it looked totally real.
It didn't look like it was transparent or anything?
No. It just
It was a
looked
dude
like...
with a robe.
Yeah, it didn't look like a dude because it was like 4 feet tall.
Oh, like a gnome.
Yeah, I mean, I assumed it was like... Because my uncle's a big UFO guy, so I'm like, I saw an alien.
Whoa.
And at the time, I was convinced of that. Later, I became more skeptical, and when I was like 15, I woke up and I saw this fucking figure standing at the foot of my bed. You ever seen the movie Dark City?
Yes.
It did that sleep thing from Dark City, and I was like, okay. And I
you
went back to sleep.
Holy shit, dude.
I woke up the next morning, I'm like, if that happens again, I'm going to fucking tackle this thing.
You sure that wasn't just a dream?
I'm pretty sure I was awake, because the 2 weeks later, I saw it again, and I did like I planned to do. I fucking jumped up and I tried to tackle it, and it just kind of disappeared in my arms when I got to it,
dude.
And I was like, okay, well that was okay. I was relieved, because I'm like, it was obviously a hallucination. And then I look up and its fucking head is floating there, and then this head vanishes.
Whoa.
But these are just hallucinations. I mean,
maybe, or maybe your fucking house is haunted.
They're not
son.
interdimensional.
You ever had sleep paralysis? I have. And when people say it's just a dream, I want to scream. Because when it's happening, it feels more real than waking life. And the worst part? Everyone sees the same thing. A presence, a shadow. Sometimes it moves. Think about it. Why do people on opposite sides of the world with no contact or shared beliefs describe the same shadow? Maybe it's not just in our heads. Maybe it's in the room with us. Joe Rogan has taken DMT more than once. But what really disturbs him are the guests who describe the same experience, the same entities, and the chilling feeling that they're not hallucinations, but a reintroduction to something ancient.
Yeah.
So do you think you've done more to popularize DMT than anybody else? Do you think that these elves are real?
I don't know if real's the right word. The question is, we look at consciousness and we look at like an intelligent entity as being in a physical carbon-based form that's in front of you that you can shake hands with or give a hug to.
Right.
When you experience what happens when you take dimethyltryptamine, you throw all that out the window because the environment itself is not it's not defined. It's fluid, meaning that it's changing constantly, but yet it seems far more vivid and far more real than this life right now. And there are these things that are there, and they communicate with you, and they seem to be really communicating with you, and they seem to also know you, know all of your bullshit, and be able to see right through you.
Yes.
But they don't seem to be you. They seem to be something else.
Right.
That's all we know.
Right, but I'm asking you what you think.
But that's what I think. That's all we know. There's no, you can't, like you could say that's a well of souls. That's what happens when you die. That's the afterlife. That's a parallel dimension. These are aliens. That's how they can communicate with us. They're non-physical life forms that exist in these realms of light. We don't know. It's just, you're just guessing, right?
Well, I've been talking to people, and I've been told the theory that we are 3D beings, but they're 4D beings. So that we're 3D projections of 4D beings. So when you're breaking the veil, you are perceiving the 4D space.
Maybe. But that's all you could ever say. It's really just a maybe. You know, when people say, I know what that is, I am communicating with the afterlife, or I know what that is, these are the real aliens. This is what happens when you're sleeping and people have these alien abduction experiences. What they really are having is an endogenous DMT dump, because your brain does produce DMT.
Right. Okay, but let me ask you another question.
Okay.
Let's suppose I drew in a piece of paper, I drew you, and I drew me, and I drew a house, right?
Okay.
And I said, what does what correspond to? And you'd point to that, you'd say, that's me. And you'd point to that, you'd say, that's Malice. That house has no correspondence in 3D space. It's a theoretical house, right?
Okay.
What if some of these people that you're talking about don't exist in the 4D space? What if they are 3D representations that don't have a representation in 4D space, just like that 2D house I just drew doesn't really exist?
Okay, so what if they're like, what is that?
NPCs, yeah. What if they literally don't have a higher form of existence?
Isn't that like your ego fucking with you, though?
Well, that's why I'm asking you, because apparently when people do a lot of DMT, they see things like this.
Oh, do they?
Yeah. That's what I'm heard.
Yeah, I wonder. I've met people that see things on DMT that were very ego driven. Like I knew a guy who had a crazy DMT trip, and he felt like he had a team that was working for him in this other dimension, and they were all about him, and they're helping him, and they're all together with him, and that like his life, he has destiny in his life, and he has to fulfill his destiny, and they're working to fulfill his. I'm like, this is like some weird ego-driven idea of what's happening in this space, that he's like sort of he's forcing whatever that experience was to fit this mold of what he thinks of himself. And by the way, it wasn't very accomplished at the time, right? So thinks of this as like it's delusions of grandeur, right?
Of course, I know well.
Yeah, but this is, I think, a kind of some sort of a reconciliation of that. Like he's sort of trying to figure out why it's not happening the way he wants it to happen, and what is wrong, but yet also tripping and seeing these entities and saying, oh, they're all with me, they're going to help me, they're working with me on all of my plans, and this is all my team in another life. It was very strange. So I never felt like that at all. I've felt every time I've done it, it's like, here's all your bullshit.
Oh yeah,
look at you, loser. It's highlighted.
No, it's never like you're so great, and we're so honored to be talking to you, Joe Rogan. It's like, dude, get over yourself. No,
you ain't shit. Yeah.
But I thought that there are some people who basically become chiropractors of reality. So if he's like, you're going to help me achieve my goals and you're behind me, that's nonsense.
Yeah.
But if he's there to help them achieve their goals, that's a whole very different perspective.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So like that kind of thing where like just awesome things happen to you, not what you would want, but you're basically an agent of bringing about positivity and kindness in the world.
Yeah. Well, I think the more you can do good things, right? The more you can be an agent of kindness and positivity, the more you're going to literally spread out the fingers and branches of love.
Right.
And if you do that, and then you do have psychedelic experiences, I would imagine if you've made a positive shift like that, your experience would be much more positive when you go into that dimension.
Right.
Yeah.
This isn't just about drugs. It's about the possibility that our minds, under the right conditions, can tune into a frequency we're not meant to hear. And what's on that frequency might be watching us back. And now we arrive at the moment the world should have stopped. A top intelligence official testified under oath, not on a podcast but in Congress, that we've recovered non-human craft. And not just craft, but biologics.
Human intelligence collection wasn't really formalized until the Office of Strategic Services, the OSS, which became the CIA in 1947. You had, Paul Mellon and all these other affluent guys of all these old money families that basically created the CIA. So that's probably the reason why.
So this thing that was recovered, this was the first documented one that the United States had access to?
I can't get into if it was the first or not, but it was an early one.
Very early.
Yeah.
So it's almost 100 years ago.
Yes.
And so they take this thing and then they bring it where?
I can't get into those
Can't get
details.
into that.
No.
Okay. So they bring it somewhere in the United States. And was the attempt to try to back engineer this thing? Was the attempt to try to understand what it was?
Yeah, I mean, first of it, obviously, it's understanding the situation, right? What do we have our hands on? And like I've said in some other videos and stuff, we took the Manhattan Project secrecy and overlaid it on this issue because that secrecy worked well for atomic bomb developments and whatnots. And certainly this whole program in a nutshell, if I were to summarize the 90 plus years of history, it is a reverse engineering program to garner some kind of insight. And of course, not a lot of the things that we've learned from it are directly, ripped off the technology we found, but it has inspired other innovations that made its way into other U.S. classified programs over the year for national defense reasons, and it's a myriad of different things. So
The UFO folklore is that this is where fiber optics were discovered first.
yeah, I'm not going to break the seal on anything we've discovered or anything like that. And yeah, it's a place I can't go to.
How limited
yeah.
are you
Yeah.
in what you can discuss and what you can't discuss, and why?
Yeah.
Why do they let you discuss any of this?
Yeah, so anything sensitive that I want to say as it relates to like U.S. government activity, whether it be intelligence stuff, military stuff, etc., I have to submit it through what they call DOPSR, DoD Office of Pre-Publication and Security Review. That is something anybody who's been an intel officer, anybody with like a clearance, has to submit that kind of stuff. They're vouching that you didn't say any nasty code words, you didn't burn a specific ongoing classified program. And for them, I mean, I'm not in their OODA loop, but certainly it's a catch-22 for them where if they want to redact and they propose a redaction, they're like, hey, Dave, you can't say these sentences. You can rewrite it and resubmit. We can't necessarily tell you what agency said to redact it, but you're not allowed to say this. They would be basically self-certifying there's a there. So in my opinion, probably the policy is like, if it has to deal with the subject, we're not saying anything. We're not proposing any redactions. As long as he's not burning a conventional program, we kind of have to allow him to exercise his First Amendment rights. And so I think it's like a catch-22 for that office is kind of the short of the long answer. So what does Harry Reid actually know? Like, why did he, give $21 million to DIA and Bigelow Aerospace for this? So I'm sitting there in Harry Reid's living room, right next to him with some other witnesses that were there with me. And he straight up says, he's like, yeah, I knew we had UFO material. I was denied access for decades. I tried to get access, and then he explained some of his efforts during OSAP, and I was like, holy shit, did the former majority leader just say, did he just confirm this to me as well? I was already talking to these amazing high-level people, but I have Harry Reid literally saying, yes, we have material, and, he knew it was non-human.
Did Harry Reid have personal experience with this?
I don't know if he's had any personal stuff in his personal life.
I mean, did he see it? He
said,
witness?
In terms of seeing the material himself, he said he was denied access for years, decades was his term. And he actually told me on behalf of me, he had like a weekly call with President Joe Biden at the time. And he straight up said to me, he was going to talk to President Biden about this issue. Literally. And then what he was telling me about OSAP, I was like, holy shit, I have like 20 other people that told me this, dude. So the real history, what fucking OSAP was, because I think there's a lot of people out there that think they were looking at ghosts, Skinwalker Ranch. Yes, they went to the ranch as a secondary and tertiary objective. But the real reason, so like there's a document that came out a couple years ago through FOIA from the Defense Intelligence Agency. There was this special access program request that Harry Reid, you might have seen this, I think like George Knapp and company have reported on this, that he sent to the Deputy Secretary of Defense, William Lynn. And it was asking for one of the most serious SAPs you can ask for, what they call a bigoted, waived special access program. So waived means it's limited congressional reporting. That is a class of special access programs, and bigoted means it's like by name, and it was like you can read the FOIA document. It was like Harry Reid, James Inhofe, Lou Elizondo, etc. And I'm like, why are you asking for the most serious SAP to be created for a program that ostensibly is looking at Skinwalker Ranch and stuff? And it doesn't make any sense. So what really happened there, and Harry Reid, God bless his soul, made this disclosure a couple weeks after we met in the New Yorker, and you can look this up. I think it was like a May 2021 New Yorker story where he says, I knew for decades, and he made this disclosure, not me, so I'm going to say the name of the contractor. Harry Reid said this, we knew that Lockheed Martin had this material for decades. I tried to get access and I was denied. And specifically with the Lockheed Martin stuff, he was talking about during the OSAP program. And for the people who are on this program, I submitted this shit to DOPSR, got this cleared, so don't freak out, but I'm telling the truth here. So Lockheed Martin wanted to divest itself from this material at a specific facility that's known to me, that I provided to the Inspector General, like street address, all that shit, right? And the idea was if they made a catcher's mitt, a security catcher's mitt for this shit, at, most serious SAP possible, the contractor and the other government customer, which was the Central Intelligence Agency, for that specific Lockheed material, and it was shit that they recovered from like the 50s and stuff, and it was like bits and pieces of like hull structure, shit like that, and so they were going to tech transfer it, and the $21 or $22 million was actually for Bigelow Aerospace to build out, facilities in Las Vegas and material analysis equipment. And I saw the staff meeting slides. I saw the paperwork. Like there's a paperwork trail I've seen on this shit. And I talked to the people involved in this program.
If he's telling the truth, everything you know about your government, your history, and your species is incomplete. And if he's lying, why are so many people trying to silence him? You've just heard 5 stories that shouldn't exist. But they do. Each one a thread unraveling something bigger, darker, and maybe more real than anything we've been told. We laugh at ghosts, we mock aliens, we call them stories, dreams, drugs, delusions. But the fear we feel, that's real. And if fear is a survival instinct, what exactly is it warning us about? Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell. More mind-blowing stories are on the way. This is just the beginning.